Hey guys, welcome to the ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Baldermort Guide to Warhammer 40k. Today's episode is called ROGAL DORN Praetorian Of Terra, Part 2. I've watched Part 1, which was ROGAL DORN Primarch of the Imperial Fists. In that video, we were watching the backstory of the Imperium of Man and how Earth was first controlled by the Human Confederation, and they had a large, technologically advanced empire that span across the galaxy, and its downfall due to their own creations, the Men of Iron, and also the evolution of human psychers, which also resulted in huge calamities across many different human worlds, and society collapsed. Humanity rose again under the new banner of the Emperor of Mankind, and he created sons, 20 of them, who had his genetic imprint, if I can say it like that, and the Chaos Gods spread them across the galaxy to make sure that, the Emperor doesn't have this sort of power that could overwhelm them. And we focused on one particular son, ROGAL DORN, who landed on the planet Inward, a very cold and harsh planet, and with very disciplined civilization in terms of them being a very martial military kind of society that have conquered their own interstellar backyard and have created their own little empire. And at the head was ROGAL DORN, one of the Emperor's sons. He achieved many great things as the leader of his people, and when he finally met his father, he united with his father, he united his entire empire with his father's dream of uniting all of humanity under one banner. He was not one of the most sociable brothers of the Emperor. He was very loyal, very determined to achieve the dream that he and his father shared, and he loved his brothers, particularly his eldest brother, Horus, Lupercal, and Sanguinius. He cherished them, and now we're continuing on with Act 2 of ROGAL DORN, and we're going to figure out probably what happened to that unity, what happened to the love that Horus and that Horus had for his father and for the rest of his brothers, and what led to the betrayal and the rebellion by Horus and his traitor primarchs. Yes. Okay guys, let's start Act 2. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, gentle listener. Before we continue, I would implore you to listen to my first entry concerning ROGAL DORN, the Praetorian of Terra. Without the context therein contained, I feel you would be robbing yourself of the impact of the information that is presented here. But as always, I am at your disposal. Also, I would have it noted, gentle listener, that I have omitted so much as to make a veteran of the setting enraged. But do remember that this is an introduction only, and not an attempt to encapsulate the entirety of the events to which ROGAL DORN was party, nor an attempt to explain the entirety of the drama. For there are many perspectives, so much information, that people retreat into the world of Warhammer for months, years, and even decades, as a refuge from the vicissitudes of the world. As I stated in my previous entry for ROGAL, it is the very appeal of the Warhammer universe, its scope, its depth. So, let us continue the tale of the greatest story of the Warhammer 40k universe, the reason it is loved so deeply, its very soul. I speak not of ROGAL DORN specifically, but of the dreaded moment, the darkest point in this fictional world, what I call the longest second, which is contained herein. First, let us paint the scene. We left it with ROGAL on Terra, Earth, the birthplace of humanity. But let us familiarize ourselves with the cast of players, the stars of the dark drama that is about to unfold. For without this knowledge we cannot appreciate the man of whom I speak, ROGAL, and the titanic struggle which he faced, practically alone. We know that there were 20 Primarchs, but 2 had passed from history before the rebellion of Horus, forever afterwards called the Horus Heresy, began. 8 fell to chaos and sided with Horus, making a full half of the total number of the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines. First, we shall discuss those Primarchs and their legions that remained faithful. 9 should have been loyal, so why was ROGAL so outnumbered and alone? The simple truth is that Horus Lupercal fell to evil far before he raised his treacherous banners on Istvan V, years before. While invested with the power and authority of War Master, High Lord and General of all of the forces of the Emperor, Horus plotted, schemed, and planned. He knew which Primarchs, and by dint of this, their legions, that would never recant their loyalty to their father, the master of mankind, the Emperor. So, knowing full well of his inevitable need to rebel openly, he prepared. Oh, long did he prepare before he turned the colour of his cloth. We know that he schemed to destroy a large segment of the Loyalist armies by deed of ambush, as I have related at the betrayal of Istvan V, the Dropsite Massacre, where full 3 Loyalist legions were shattered. The legions destroyed were the Iron Hands, sons of Ferrus Manus, who was slain, the Salamanders, sons of Vulcan, and the Raven Guard, the sons of Corvus Corax. But that left 6 more. So in the months and years before he raised his banners and proclaimed himself, Horus contrived to send them to places so far-flung or dangerous that they would not be able to stop him when the final deed was realized. Rebut Guilliman, the Primarch of the most numerous and most organized legion, the Ultramarines, was sent as far to the galactic east as Horus could send him without raising suspicion. But more than this, he also was led into a trap laid by Lorgar. Leman Russ, the Wolf Lord and self-professed Emperor's executioner, who led the Vulca Fenrica, the Space Wolves, also was sent far afield, but we know he returned to Terra, but then went on a rampage, and was secluded and harried until he was unable to support ROGAL. Lion L. Johnson, the Lion, the Primarch of the First Legion, the Dark Angels, was sent to the galactic north. For the Lion was a dire threat to Horus and his rebellious brothers, as he was a natural genius in the arts of war, his legion the most lauded after only the sons of Horus. He was sent as far away as Horus could practically get away with. Horus, like all of the Primarchs, had a natural fear of the Lion on an instinctive level. He was neutralized thus as the highest priority. Sanguinius, the Angel and Primarch of the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels. Horus knew this particular brother was also a dire threat to any rebellion, and Horus connived to send him into a trap again in the galactic north. But for the full tale of the trap, we will have to wait until I can perform an entry for this, the most loved of all Primarchs. Ferrus Manus was dead. Vulcan was missing, presumed dead also. Corvus Corax's legion was a shadow of its power, denuded of numbers after the Dropside massacre, despite Corvus's attempt to artificially increase his numbers through cloning. He was betrayed again by the Alpha Legion, and he failed. Thus Rogal asked him, the master of the raid and surprise attack, to skirt the oncoming juggernaut of the traitors and attack their supply lines. Thus it was that Corvus played merry hell with the rear of the traitor advance, but never enough to do more than slow them and annoy them with constant inconvenience. Horus knew his craft and had prepared for all eventualities. This left only Jaghatai and his White Scars, and Rogal Dorn and his Imperial Fists to fight the traitors. But there were so many of them, so well led, so many Primarchs in the field, so many forces that had turned. But let us explore them now, the legions of evil, the cohorts of chaos, so we can grasp the magnitude of Rogal's heroism. For any human must be judged by the caliber of their opposition, and oh, what opposition Rogal had to contend with. The forces of evil. Lorgar Aurelian, the Primarch of the Word-Bearers Legion, who is known as the First Traitor, accredited with being the spider behind the scenes that facilitated the fall of the War Master. Lorgar had turned to chaos years before Horus. He was sent to the worlds of Ultramar, the home of the Ultramarines, and met with them as a friend, only to turn on them in a well-laid ambush on the world of Calth. The attempt was to do unto the Ultramarines what the traitors had done at the Dropside massacre, but though the Word-Bearers attacked with fury and completely unlooked for, the Ultramarines were more organized and ever prepared, and the projected massacre instead turned into a battle that Reboot was winning. Angron, dubbed by many as the Red Angel, the Primarch of the World Eaters, who was sent with Lorgar to the east and performed surprise raids on the worlds of Ultramar, the home of Reboot Guilliman and his Ultramarines, while they were waylaid at Calth. Angron visited a high toll from the worlds of Ultramar, but was soon pushed back by the well-organized and professional forces of the Ultramarines. Lorgar then enacted a huge dark ritual that summoned a warp storm, called the Ruin Storm in history, and cut the galactic east off from Holy Terra. Thus were the Ultramarines and Reboot unable to answer the call to Terra, because they did not hear it. So dire were things that Reboot Guilliman actually believed that Horus had already won, and the Emperor was already dead. Thus, he did not even look to Terra until later. Conrad Kurz, called the Night Haunter, Primarch of the Night Lords, was playing a strange game with his loyalist brothers on the other side of the Ruin Storm. But that is for another time. Alfarius and Omegon, the twin Primarchs and Lords of the Alpha Legion, were not with Horus's main thrust, but we should get to them in due course. Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children, who, over the time of the rebellion, not only fell to evil, but became a demon prince, infused with the power of the dark gods, and twisted out of all recognition in the service of the god Slanesh, the Lord of Excess. Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard, also became a thing of horror, and he also became a demon prince, but this time to the service of the god Nurgle, the Lord of Decay. Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, who had an enduring hatred of Rogal Dorn and all of his sons, the Imperial Fists. Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Sons, who had also been transformed into a terrifying apparition of evil, a demon prince of Tzeentch, the Lord of Change. All did as instructed by Horus, well, within limits. Their combined legions inexorably ground forward, crushing all resistance in their path. Eventually, they all met with the arch-traitor, the War Master Horus Lupercal, on the world of Alanor Prime, the very site where Horus had been elevated to War Master. From there, they moved forward into the last phase of their campaign, the attack on the Sol System, the heart of the Imperium, where Terra was.
Okay, in all of this time when Horus and his 8 brothers began their rebellions, where was the Emperor really? I know that he was constructing a device that could enter into the not into the warp, but into another dimension. I just forgot the name of that dimension. But honestly, he should be having like a psychic link with all of his sons. So he should have realized that there's something going on outside. There's something terrible going on with my sons. I mean, really, it's just... I'm just still trying to understand this God Emperor. Maybe he allowed all of this to transpire. Maybe he knew that his son, one of his sons or some of his sons would start to betray him. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't. And maybe he's just not a god, you know. He's just a very powerful psyker who happens to be a perpetual. And, you know, he does mistakes. He has mistakes. He has these limits. He can only go so far. So, I think I just have to minimize my expectations of this supposed God Emperor and just see him as an overlord who has power, but he is not infallible. He's not some sort of god. He is just a very powerful being. Yeah, I think that's how I should see him from now on, and stop using this notion of a god, because it just doesn't suit. Not after all of this. Not after all of this. No.
This may have seemed like the beginning of a biblical book, the unending names, but I wish to update you on the situation and, more importantly, to graphically outline the forces arrayed against ROGAL as the unofficial war master of the loyalist armies. Each Primarch was a titan of war, a genius, a charismatic leader, and a terror. Every single one of them. Yet ROGAL held them back, delaying them with endless energy, tactical brilliance, and unquenchable zeal. He did this for 7 years. Imagine that. To fight against the most experienced warriors the human race had ever seen, trained by the Emperor for decades, if not centuries longer than ROGAL or any of his brothers. Yet ROGAL Dorn had these forces at bay for over half a decade. He never tired. He never succumbed to grief. He never gave in to despair. No matter how many times he lost, no matter how many times he was pushed back. Jaghatai was with him, and at points also Leman Russ, but none had the huge weight of command on their shoulders. Everything that went wrong, every defeat, every setback was laid at the feet of ROGAL, yet he never once lost faith. ROGAL was playing a game of chess against his brother, Horus, but Horus had 9 queens to ROGAL's 2, and thrice the number of pawns, knights, bishops, and rooks. Phenomenal courage. But in all of this, where was the master of mankind? Where was the Emperor, I hear you ask? Alas, the full story we cannot hope to cover here, but in brief. He had returned to Earth to create his own webway, a method of travel that would not be reliant on the warp.
Yes, that's the other dimension kind of travel, the webway. That's what I was looking for.
That was so infested with the demons and other enemies of humanity. He was trying to secure the greatest safety of humanity and negate the need for travel via the warp, as he remembered the age of strife, old night, and how warp storms had almost destroyed the human race. Thus he was attempting to create a transit system that would forever remove the need for any human to be exposed to that horrible dimension. He was building for the future, as he so trusted that Horus and his brothers would continue the Great Crusade and bring peace and freedom to humanity. He had expected the outcome to be foregone, or he would never have retreated from active leadership of the Crusade. More is the pity. It is a complicated story, which we will explore more in other notes, but Magnus, before he turned to evil, attempted to warn his father of the rebellion of Horus, but in doing so he burst the wards, the mystic psychic shields that the Emperor had erected around his palace to protect his webway project. When this happened, the warp flooded into his subrealm. The gateway to the warp that was to be the first door into his new webway was left open, and all of the powers of chaos sent legion after legion of foul beings, the Neverborn, their demons, to try to crush the Emperor and use his own gateway to invade the Immaterium, the real world, on the ground of Terra itself.
I thought Magnus was already part of the traitor Primarchs, so that means he must have joined them after this situation, this problem that he created by trying to force himself into the palace, and inform his father that Horus is creating a rebellion. So I'm assuming that he turned traitor after that. But what's the reason? Like, is it because his father was angry with him? Was the Emperor angry with him that he destroyed the wards that protected the webway? Or is it something else that convinced him to leave the loyalists and join the traitors? Yeah.
Thus the master of mankind had no choice but to exert all of his energy and bend all of his will and godlike psychic powers to fending off the endless tide of evil that assailed his very hearth, the palace on Terra. The majority of his bodyguard, his custodies, who were even more powerful in combat than Space Marines, were with him in this subrealm attempting to hold the line. Thus he could not break his concentration, his great exertion, for even an instant to assist his son, ROGAL, in his labours. I will note now that there is an important figure I am leaving out of this recounting, along with many events and nuances, that of Malcador the Sigillite, but for his history again, we must wait for his own entry. He did his best to assist ROGAL, but the burden of the war was not on his shoulders, and not at his command. A psyker of almost limitless power though he was not a Primarch, and could not offer ROGAL the support that he most needed. So we can see that ROGAL fought on. I can honestly state that there are few deeds in any mythology, fiction or fable that can come even close to the magnitude of the bravery, tenacity or genius exhibited by ROGAL, despite it being a constant string of defeats. Those defeats exacted a tithe of blood from the traitors that they could scarce even imagine. But it got worse. Despite the pain of the rebellion to ROGAL, the situation got much worse. While he tried to outthink, outmaneuver, and outgeneral a plethora of his brothers, his very rear was assailed. Enter stage left Alfarius, and his Alpha Legion. Alpharius and Omegon, the only twin Primarchs, had been the last to be found by the Great Crusade, and very late in the day. So much so that the Emperor left his training to Horus. So it was to Horus that they were both loyal. Alpharius and Omegon were the little brothers to all of the Primarchs. They had been found so late. As such, they could never hope to accrue the accolades and glories that others had accrued over 2 centuries or more of the Great Crusade. And what is more, the Alpha Legion under Alpharius and Omegon were very unlike the other legions. They acted subtly and with secrecy, manipulation and guile, where most of the other legions fought directly. Many derided the Alpha Legion and their lords for being cowardly and capricious, but Alpharius gained results all right. Alas, Alpharius was to prove to be a terrible thorn in the side of the Loyalists when he finally revealed himself. His legion had been sent earlier than any other and had prepared the way. Alpharius activated sleeper units all across the Sol system and brought about pandemonium. ROGAL had to contend with so much already, but ever did the sleeper units of Alpharius cause carnage, instability and mayhem wherever they activated. More than this, they shook the very spirit of the Loyalist soldiery. For the Alphas made them question the ability of ROGAL, and burned, bombed or sabotaged where the hurt would be most. The hurt most often targeted was the very image of ROGAL Dorn and his ability and his authority. It was not only that. Alpharius made it so personal. He even went so far as to inform ROGAL that he had informants in the palace itself. How, you may ask? In the Investory, a huge hall in the inner sanctum of the palace, there once stood 20 statues, each a perfect likeness of the 20 Primarchs. 2 were destroyed when the Primarchs fell from grace and their history was expunged from all record, at the command of the Emperor himself. And they are the greatest secret of the Warhammer universe, and not in 30 years has it categorically been stated what happened to them. There are theories. Alpharius' spies blew up all but 2 of the statues, one being himself, Alpharius, the second being ROGAL Dorn, a declaration of war, and also an attempt to unsettle and intimidate ROGAL, if not the warrior within him, Dorn. But he may as well have been spitting in the wind. ROGAL fought for something he could never understand, let alone appreciate. ROGAL fought for a dream that clearly even baffled Alpharius. His adversaries continued to underestimate ROGAL at every turn, to their later regret, all of them. ROGAL also knew that it meant something even more terrible. It meant that Horus had turned years before ROGAL knew. Horus had been planning this great betrayal for years. How this must have hurt ROGAL, to know he may even have had communication with his brother when he was already a traitor in his heart, if not by proclamation. It is a wonder that ROGAL was not driven mad by the combination of grief, strain, and constant defeat. For any other Primarch, even Horus, it would have been too much. Yet ROGAL stood proud. No matter the reality of the situation staring him in the face, the inevitability of his defeat, he still believed. ROGAL believed that if he just held out long enough, fought hard enough, exacted enough of a blood price from the traitors, that either they would break and fall upon one another, as all traitors and the faithless always do eventually, or that more of his loyalist brothers would come to his aid in the defense of their father. Every day, he knew, was a day closer to the moment when the lion, the angel, or Reboot may arrive, if he could just hold on. Nor was ROGAL permitted a moment's respite, even when there was a temporary break in the direct hostilities, as the traitors rallied for another sally. for in these moments he was either dealing with the actions of Alfarius, or he was performing another task he found odious in the extreme. ROGAL was a master of defensive war and fortification, no matter how much Perturabo may claim otherwise. He was plying his trade to the highest level he had ever done. He dug deep. ROGAL was making the Sol system a death trap of overlapping fire, concentric circles of defences. But his least favourite task was the marring of the Emperor's palace. Over centuries, the palace on Terra had been crafted into a thing of sublime beauty and a testament not only to the power of the Emperor, but the creativity, glory and beauty possible within the heart of humanity. How ROGAL hated to mar it with iron and granite and steel. Colonnades of beautiful marble were replaced with gun emplacements and death traps. Warrens of previously scintillating tessellated mosaic were replaced with traps and hard points. ROGAL never betrayed his feelings to those around him, but how he must have wanted to weep for the marring of the work of thousands. The shining beacon of human endeavour that was now replaced with a glorified bunker. Finally, as the forces of Horus mustered on Ullanor, Alfarius came out into the open. He had powered down a vast fleet of his ships, his men in stasis, so they could not be detected by any of ROGAL's many listening outposts and scanners, and simply used the tides of space to drift him past the defences of ROGAL. He was within the net. The Alpha Legion Armada then powered up and began a raid on a fundamentally important position in the outer Sol system. On a moon of Pluto called Hydra, Alfarius was assailing the astropathic choir when he learned, to his regret, that again he had underestimated ROGAL Dorn. When the fleet of traitors has simply materialized within his defenses, Dorn...
The way that... The way that Baldermort says ROGAL DORN. It's so funny. It's so really funny. I like how he emphasizes that power behind his name. Really, I do enjoy it.
Reacted with lightning organization and led a scrambled fleet to stop him. The traitors had intended to strike and fade, as was the way of the Alpha Legion, but ROGAL Dorn was a master of void combat. That is, war in space. Dorn slung-shot his reactionary fleet around multiple celestial bodies and arrived to catch Alfarius in their act. Without hesitation, Dorn assessed the situation and his fleet attacked. ROGAL Dorn received reports that the traitor Primarch was personally leading a force of his elite Terminators into the very heart of the station on Hydra, and Dorn intervened. Dorn appeared and found his brother in the act of slaughtering Imperial Fist defenders. The last to be found, he may have been, but he was a Primarch, and none save another Primarch could face one. So Dorn engaged him in close combat. The battle was fierce, and some say that it was only the act of an Imperial Fist grabbing the haft of the spear Alfarius had aimed at the hearts of Dorn that spared him. But the upshot was that Dorn took the strike on an unimportant segment of his body armour. Dorn, in one fluid movement, cut his brother's hands off, slashed Alfarius across the chest, then took Alfarius' spear and rammed it into him. Dorn then took his mighty chainsword, Storm's Teeth, and embedded it into Alfarius' skull, ending him instantly. The Alpha Legion retreated swiftly, and from that point on almost removed themselves from direct action, and merely provided information to Horus and the traitor command. But this was enough. Alfarius may have died in his raid, but he had discerned every last echelon of the defences ROGAL had spent years constructing, and had already sent it to the War Master. Horus would know every last hard point, every last battery, sight and sinew at the defences of Terra and the Sol system. Dorn, the part of the man that was a demigod of battle, strategist and war master, was the one who executed Alfarius without missing a heartbeat. Perhaps it was the months of frustration, terrorist attacks, the open challenge, the rage he could not take out on Horus and the other traitors. It was the first time ROGAL Dorn had seen one of his foes in person, and the rage, built up over more than half a decade of horror, was white hot.
Well, I also think maybe because, like we've been told that, Alfarius and Ommegon, I think that was the twin brother, were the last Primarchs to be found, and maybe they didn't have a relationship with ROGAL Dorn and with the other brothers as much, and maybe ROGAL Dorn didn't really have that kind of affinity for them like he did probably for his other brothers. So yeah, I mean, wow, that battle was very graphic, very graphically detailed, and bloody, and yeah, well done to ROGAL.
Perhaps ROGAL might have mourned his brother, but he did not get the time nor space to even consider the brother he had never spent any time with, or built any bond with. Dorn knew that Horus Lupercal was on his way, and all the legions of hell were in his wake. And this is when the heavens opened and the sun shone. For beyond all hope, a fleet arrived in the outer system, one that was loyal. The fleet that made its way at maximum speed toward Terra and made contact. But not any fleet, not any legion, not just any Primarch. Dorn took the notification with stern compose. Of all those who could have arrived, to ROGAL, this must have been a dream come true, a balm to that so very weary soul. Of all that could have come, all that could have helped, his secret wish must have been for it to be this one. He had made it through the ruin storm. It was the Blood Angels. And on board was the one Primarch who could have made ROGAL sing with joy, if that was his way. It was his beloved, most trusted, most respected brother. It was the angel himself. At last, Sanguinius had come. ROGAL was no longer alone. They would face Horus and his vile scum together. Sanguinius was here. When they met, it was a somber occasion, as the two other would not be possible for Dorn. But how he must have felt the weight, the burden, lift ever so slightly. For if anyone could bring hope back to the beleaguered men, women, children of Terra, and even the war-weary Astartes of the Imperial Fists, it was the angel. Like a bright star he blazed, and ROGAL started to believe again. Just a little. Enough to go on. Enough to make those traitors pay. They may not live, they may not prevail, but with Sanguinius next to him, ROGAL could make a good end of it. He would fight. Even the warrior within, Dorn, must have quietly rejoiced. For none could steady the lines of the loyalist armies, none other could make them believe again as well. The angel had come, and he had brought his entire legion with him. The Blood Angels, the warriors of the Emperor's own wrath. The Imperial Fist would stand, but by their side would be the very manifestation of the Emperor's rage. Those traitors were in for a real fight now. Perhaps long enough for the Lion or the Wolf or the Ultramarines to arrive. Perhaps, if they fought hard enough. Just perhaps. But scant time did they have before the inevitable began anew, and their forces of the traitors were detected. The armada of the traitors reached the Sol system and went about their onward plunge towards Terra itself. All the defences of Rogal were swept away, one by one, in detail, for Horus knew of them all, thanks to Alfarius and Omegon. But despite all of the knowledge and forewarning he had, the casual raid amongst the traitor fleet was eye-watering. If anything but the Emperor himself were not the target, then the traitors would have disengaged. The rings around Terra, the loyalist navy, the batteries on Luna, and every satellite, asteroid, and everything in between was arranged by ROGAL DORN to punish the rebels, and punish them it did. Nor was their advance swift. For 30 days, the fleet was held at bay and cut to ribbons for its troubles.
I mean, imagine that. Just imagine 30 days of void space battle. Non-stop. Layer after layer, fortress after fortress, ship to ship battles, aircraft, and everything else that is associated with the space battle is occurring for 30 long days. Oh, I could watch that on TV, or in the cinemas. I mean, you know what? They should actually make a Warhammer 40k movie, but I don't think it would be feasible. Yeah, I mean, the way we're being presented, all of this entire universe, it's just, I think it's unfeasible to make it as a movie. Maybe a TV series, but even that, I don't think it would do it justice. I mean, the content in this universe is just overwhelming. And clearly, even the landscapes, the way they show Terra, the way they show the battleships and everything else, it just looks like it's going to balloon into the billions of dollars just to produce a series or a movie based on Warhammer 40k. And considering also the violence and the xenophobic tendencies of this empire, I don't know if the public nowadays are prepared to watch something unorthodox, if I can say that, in the mainstream media. But it would be amazing. It would truly be amazing.
Horus and his brothers had to witness hundreds upon hundreds of their ships, a full quarter of their fleet, burned, blasted, and crushed. But on they came nonetheless. On to Terra. The moment that the traitor fleet was in range, the bombardment began. Plasma and missiles, nuclear and chemical, rained down on the Imperial Palace and the whole of Terra. The birthplace of humanity, the center of the Imperium, was hit by a deluge of mass and corruption, destruction and death, the likes had never been seen before, even during the worst years of the Unification Wars. The traitors unleashed hell and maintained this assault for days on end. Finally, when they had achieved what they set out to do, destroy as many defenses as possible, and sow discord, confusion, terror, and death, did the firing cease and the landing begin.
Okay, there's one thing here that maybe I just, because of my own ignorance, I just don't know, but why didn't Primarch Horus use Exterminatus on the planet? I know that the Primarchs have the authority. I mean, this was even before the Inquisition was created, right? Or maybe the Inquisition was existing during that time, I'm not sure. But, they had the authority to command or conduct an Exterminatus. Why didn't Horus also do the same on Terra? Why didn't he just blow up the entire planet? Kill everybody? Then, you won't need to come personally to the Emperor to come and kill him. You can just kill all of your enemies in one go, you know? So I don't get that. They have the power to destroy worlds. Why didn't they use it on Earth then?
Drop pods. Think of a missile that strikes, and then instead of exploding, power-armored marines would run out, fill the skies, streaking towards the ground in their thousands. When this horror began, the sleeper units of Alfarius, those that were left, leapt into action and activated across the entire globe. In mere hours, the traitor marines were amongst the streets and defences of Terra. They massed and assaulted the 2 spaceports closest to the Imperial Palace.
I mean, wouldn't you realize that this guy's a space marine? Why is he here in the public like this? I mean, these spies, how did they look like? Were they just normal human beings, or were they space marines? Because if they're space marines, I mean, you could see them a mile away. Like, this guy is a space marine. He is not wearing any official colors of the Imperial Fists or any of the other loyalist legions. He's just walking around in the public. This guy needs to be arrested. You know, something like that. I mean, honestly, these spies just pop out of nowhere without any form of detection from the normal populace of Earth. Like, come on, guys.
Eternity Wall and Lion's Gate spaceports. Once secured, the heavens were filled with transports filled to the brim with the mortal armies of Horus. But one could not call them normal anymore. No, far from it. As the forces of the traitors arrived, they again lost eye-watering large proportions of their men and material, as ROGAL Dorn's defenses and lasers, missiles and plasma rose up to cut them from the skies in their swathes. Debris rained across Earth, Terra, all with the blood of once loyal soldiers of the Imperium on them. But land in their millions they still did. Titans, 40 or more meter tall colossi of war, were landed as well. Much of the force then gathered before the very gates of the palace, cavorting, laughing, and in high spirits, despite the tithe exacted from them. None cared for
So there were Chaos Titans as well? Wow, this is crazy.
Their own dead, and all salivated at the chance to run amok in the very home of the master of mankind. ROGAL and Sanguinius would hold the palace. Jaghatai, that lord of fast strike and savage raid, would be deployed beyond the walls. Also, because the White Scars would not do their best work on walls or parapets. ROGAL knew where to deploy his brother to the best effect, and thus he unleashed the Khan to do what he did best. Jaghatai and his mighty White Scars would punish the traitors with swift strikes and undermine their deployment, harrying them wherever they left even a millimeter gap. A move that proved to be well made. For though Horus made his flanks unassailable, the great Khan found a gap and punished the traitors mightily. He later retook the Lion Gate spaceport and turned its guns on the incoming traitors and exacted a high price from them. Jaghatai did move on the Eternity port, but was repelled. All the while he was harrying the forces of Horus, he was making sure they never had an easy time. He slew many in the name of the Emperor. But for now, we must concentrate on the defense of the palace. More will be revealed during his own video.
Where is the Mechanicus of Mars in all of this? I mean, they are literally, well, space-wise, they are literally next door. So where are these people? There's Chaos Titans on Earth. We need Martian Titans also on planet Earth just to defend Terra from the incursion of Horus. So where are the Martians? Where is the Mechanicus of Mars? Oh.
ROGAL was a whirlwind of orders, a flurry of control and direction, as he overwatched the defences not only of the palace, but of the entire planet of Terra. As a loyalist war master, he had to direct the entire defence. Thus it was his brother, Sanguinius, who manned the walls of the palace. But he saw, and what he saw must have revolted him on every level. Where the traitor armies had previously been entire sectors or systems away, they had been a foe to battle, but not a view. Now ROGAL could see exactly what they had become. As the forces of chaos.
Baldermort. Exactly what they have become. I'm really enjoying this guy.
For they were not just rebel Astartes and soldiers anymore, massed before the walls of the palace. ROGAL viewed them close up for the first time through his screens. The vile mutations, the twisted forms, the degeneration of once proud brothers in arms into creatures of nightmare. Amongst the throng of corrupted Mechanicus, the baying soldiery, and possessed demonic Astartes, Angron pushed forward. He was huge, and his inner hate was now clearly marked on his body, for he had become a demon prince, and now little remained of his semblance. He had not only given up on his humanity, he had become the very thing that the Great Crusade had striven against. A twisted thing of evil. And surrounding them all were the worst demons and minions of the warp that had been summoned, endless tides poured forth by the vile rites of the Thousand Suns. So much for Magnus's innocence. These men showed ROGAL and Sanguinius all that they needed to know about the poor, misguided son. The legions of vileness were almost uncountable. Angron strode forward and bellowed at the defending warriors, stating that they were alone and without refuge, support or means of escape. He derided them and taunted that they should surrender now and beg for his mercy. The mortal soldiery would have cowered, the Astartes been sapped of their resolve. Even the redoubtable and bluff Imperial fists, but for his brother. Sanguinius stood atop the walls and sneered at Angron, his light and courage providing hope to all those who would have run. Sanguinius's mere presence, an example, was enough. Some say that he telepathically communicated with the horror that was previously Angron, but all it appeared to those around and below was one simple statement, a look that said it all. Bring it on, scum. Angron bellowed his laughter to the sky, and all around him knew that he relished the fight to come. But some say that he quietly quaked, for why else did he return to his lines instead of assailing the angel directly? Other reports state that the angel went out and sallied forth and fought Angron directly, but then retreated back behind the shielding of the wall. So many differing tales. Such an important moment. ROGAL could see the legions of his erstwhile comrades turn to unmistakable evil. They wore it with such pride. He could see representatives of so many legions, yet he did not feel terror. He only felt his resolve strengthen, for nothing more than this sight could have told him without any doubt that he was on the side of light. So the battle was joined. A battle so in-depth and drawn out that I must only mention those parts most relevant to the story of ROGAL Dorn here. I hope to be able to cover this topic, this mighty clash of arms, from many angles, but today Let us speak of ROGAL and his experience. Thrice were the enemy thrown back from the walls, but ever they came on. Punishment beyond count was dealt to them by the indomitable Imperial fists and their wrathful Blood Angel brothers. But the tide of numbers was inexhaustible, and they were pushed back. For weeks the battle raged. Weeks. Each time the traitors and their demon minions breached a barrier or defensive line, they believed it would be the last, that the will of the defenders would sour, and they would run amok at last, only to find that ROGAL Dorn had been so very busy in the years that they had been winning battles. The overlapping fire arcs, the warrens of tunnels, the traps, the defences Dorn had erected can only be described with one word: magnificent. Even so, they finally failed. A massed push by the enemy led to the central section of the defender's line collapsing through attrition alone. For no Blood Angel or Fist retreated from anything or anyone without specific orders from ROGAL. The two legions would always be brothers, like no other from this point on, or so they thought. But the line was broken, and there was but one gate left. The final gate into the palace's inner sanctum, the Eternity Gate. But Fists, soldiery, and angels were trapped on the other side, and ROGAL could not extricate them in time. They were in danger of being butchered. It was then that ROGAL would have gone to the front himself to save them, to buy them time, for the gate had to be closed. It had to be. But ROGAL desperately did not wish for his brother's men, or those loyal humans who had fought so valiantly, to be left to the hordes of evil. It was then that his brother, Sanguinius, took up his sword and spear again, and strode forth. We do not know what was said then between these two close brothers, but Sanguinius would have stated what Dorn knew, that he, the Emperor's chosen war master, could not be the one. So Sanguinius went out to meet the hordes of evil, to buy time, the precious time needed for their flank forces to retreat into the inner palace. So ROGAL was left behind to organize, to order, to watch the chevrons of his men and the Blood Angels moving toward the gates. But ever would his eye be flicking to the one screen that mattered the most, the one containing his brother, the angel, Sanguinius. And what a spectacle he saw that day! For in all of the annals of the human race, no martial display could compare. The forces of chaos could see their goal, and their hackles were up, their mouths watering at the prospect of gaining the gate and cutting off the Fists and Blood Angels outside. But more than this, every last one wished the glory and the perverse joy of being the first to get into the palace's entry. No small amount of them relished also the thought of killing the Emperor's pretty angel, so they threw all they had at him. As the clock ticked, the chevrons moved, the time passed. Dorn was concerned, more concerned than he had been before, as if the angel fell, it would open the gates to the enemy, but also the crushing effect on morale would be untenable. The angel had to succeed. Each man, soldier or Astartes that passed the angel into the inner sanctum was one more chance, one more second, one more warrior to hold the line. 1 second closer to him giving the order to allow the angel to stand down and for the great gates to be closed. For the man inside the armor, for ROGAL, these were the longest moments of his life, he thought then. As every second ticked by, he witnessed his brother fighting as no human had ever fought. He was magnificent. Dorn knew He had to remain aloof, stoic, stable, for all those who watched. One whiff of panic, one single display of doubt or emotion, could have swept across his command staff like a tsunami. Belief. He had to project confidence and calm, all the while screaming inside, "Not Sanguinius! Not him!" As he watched, his brother gave no quarter and no ground. Where a round would bounce off his artificer armor, Sanguinius let it hit. Where it would not, he evaded. He was shot at by endless adversaries. It was a blur of activity. When the enemy Astartes, twisted, possessed, or demons themselves, charged him in their throngs, Rogal's heart must have been in his throat. Yet always the angel prevailed. He pushed them back time and time again. Tens unto hundreds. He did it alone, and he did this for not minutes, but hours. Sanguinius held the gate alone for hours. But he ran out of time.
I need to drink some water.
Some of the last of the loyalists passed him. The palace itself shuddered. A footfall of such size and power that the very ground itself reverberated to its impact. A great wailing came from amongst the demons and traitors alike, a baying, heralding an oncoming victory. For one had come, the last thing Rogal would have wanted to see. To quote, "A huge shape rose up amongst the armies of Horus. The creature was tall, taller than any around it, and as it rose up it unfolded its great leathery wings and took to the air. It was a bloodthirster, greater demon of Khorne, the most fearsome and dangerous of the bloody god's entourage. The demon flew towards Sanguinius, and he recognized it instantly. Its name was Kabanda, and he had fought the creature before." End quote. Onwards he strode to meet the angel in the air and issued his challenge. Dorn stood impassive, but how Rogal must have wished to scream at the screen. "Brother, get out! Get out of there!" To Rogal's horror, Sanguinius strode forth and took to the air to meet the vile creature from the deepest depths of hell, to meet his onward rush. And in that moment he saw, as all did, both chaos and loyalist, the microcosm of the macrocosm, good versus evil, light versus darkness, humanity against demon. The huge bulk of Kabanda came on with such force that none could fathom, none could understand how one man, for Sanguinius was a Primarch, an angel, but he was also a man, could face such a being and live. Rogal must have wanted to derelict his post, must have wanted to rush outside to help, to save his brother, to save the very hope of the Imperium, if Sanguinius were to fall. But the fury of the battle was locked, and he, as the dutiful son of the Emperor, his war master, had sworn to defend all of the Imperium. He could not move. He could not abandon his charges, the entire race, even for this hallowed son, this beloved brother. So he watched. He watched in terror. To quote, "Atop the ultimate gate, two mighty figures clashed in aerial combat. Both were winged. The angel's wings were pure white and shone brightly through the smoke and smog of war. The other was a creature of nightmare, its demonic wings leathery and dark. As they wheeled above each other in the air, the warring troops below seemed to pause to watch the unfolding drama. Know this.
People are pausing to watch the drama up in the sky. No. I'll be like, guys, focus. While they're busy looking up there, shoot at them, kill them. Make sure it's headshots. Each and every single one of you, make sure it's a headshot. While they're busy looking up there, take your shot. Really, come on guys. You can't be watching that battle like as if you're watching television. You gotta keep pushing forward.
Creature of darkness, I will take my revenge on you for past evil, said the angel, as he plunged his sword into the demon's face, spearing one of its eyes. The demon shrieked, as if in pain, but wheeled about, lashing at the Primarch with its whip and chopping at him with its great axe. The demon's whip stung the Primarch's wing, and he faltered in the air slightly. As he did so, the Bloodthirster grabbed him by the throat with its massive taloned fist. Sanguinius cut with his sword against the demon's flank. The beast flinched, but did not release. "Now you are finished, pathetic little bird," rumbled the demon, and he threw the Primarch down onto the gate below. The granite stone splintered as the Primarch's body smashed into it. The traitor horde watching roared their approval. The Primarch lay still upon the broken stone as the demon landed next to him and prepared to deal the death blow. The monster's creature threw back its head and let loose a howl of exultation. "Blood for the blood god! A skull for the skull throne!" As the demon howled in triumph over him, Sanguinius drew up, his last reserves of strength and power. With a massive effort, he painfully rose to face Commander for the last time. "Your cry of victory is mistimed, demon. I am not finished. My vengeance has yet to be taken. I shall not fall at this hour, not at your bloodied hand." And at this, Sanguinius leapt at the demon and seized it by the wrist and ankle, and he raised the beast high and smashed it down across his knee. The crack of its back breaking shook the masonry upon which they stood and echoed across the palace grounds. The hordes below watched in silence. Sanguinius, now terrible in his aspect, lifted the carcass of the demon above his head. An arc of power danced in his brow as he swung the body around and hurled the broken behemoth into the midst of the demon followers. The traitors beat their chests and wailed in dismay. The Blood Angels cheered, and the ultimate gate was shut. End.
That has got to be the funniest thing ever. I mean, just imagine the horde of chaos forces just going, "Oh, no!" And then as Sanguinius throws the demon at them, like, take it, it's yours. And then they close down the gates. That's sassy right there. Oh, that would be so funny just to watch, really. If I was a historian there, with my cameras and my writing pencil, I'd be so dead, just laughing.
Quote. Thus did the gate close, and Rogal must have felt the most relief he had ever done in his life. For Sanguinius had survived, and had dealt a major wound to the morale of the animals that beset them. Thus it was the palace was held. And how long did all of this last? Rogal and Sanguinius inside, Jaghatai outside. The battle had lasted for 55 days. 55 days. Against twice their number of Primarchs. Now infused with the power of the dark gods, some of them being demons unto themselves, evil augmenting their strength, with entire or part of 6 legions against a mere 3. Yet Rogal had held them for 55 days. And so, gentle listener, the dreaded moment draws near.
the three brothers against the terrors of chaos. Sanguinius of the Blood Angels, Jaghatai of the White Scars, and ROGAL DORN of the Imperial Fists. Oh, what a battle. What a war. What chaos and destruction. And in all of it, still they have each other. They have the loyalists. They have humans who are still fighting for the Imperium against this chaotic and dark and maniacal horde of demon worshippers and demon creatures and all other forms of nightmarish nightmares coming from the warp. And really, all the other loyalist Primarchs, I hope they get there in time. I don't know. Lion L. Johnson and Lehman and Gilliman. Well, Gilliman, I think Baldermort said that Gilliman is trapped on his side of the galaxy. There's a warp storm that's preventing him from traversing back to Terra or even to be communicated with from Terra. So yeah, he's trapped in his own sector of space. And Lehman Russ, I'm not sure where he is. Lion L. Johnson, him too, I'm not entirely sure where they are. But it seems like wherever Horus sent them before, like it's very, very far away. It will take time for the message to get to them to say, you know, guys, come back home. We have problems on Terra. So yeah, there are not a lot of loyalist brothers protecting Terra. There's only 3, and it's like, it's crazy. They're literally outnumbered and outgunned at every turn. But ROGAL DORN really prepared not only the Imperial City, but the entire planet as a fortress, as a walled fortress, prepared for war as much as he could with the time that he had and the resources that he had. And really, it's tough. It's really tough out here. The Chaos Primarchs are on full steam ahead with all of their forces, and what's his name? The traitor Horus. I'm not sure where he is in all of this, because we're hearing about the other brothers like Alfarius, who died by the hands of ROGAL. I think, yeah, Logar, I'm not sure where he is. Angron, he's there on the planet. Fulgrim as well, I don't know where he is. Mortarion, Voltarabo, and Magnus. I'm not sure if they are there on Terra or they're still in space with Horus. But yeah, it's really chaotic. It's really desperate. Really, really desperate times. And I don't know if there's going to be any more reinforcements coming to help out the 3 brothers, like in terms of Primarchs and their forces, or maybe the Emperor can send a few of his custodies to help out, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen, because he's having his own situation, holding back the chaos in the webway. So yeah, it's just tough. It's really just tough. And where are the Sisters of Silence? Are they also helping out the Emperor, or are they helping out ROGAL DORN up front? Because I think they would also be very valuable on the battlefield, considering what they can do and how they affect other, human beings who are attuned to the warp. Really, I think we need the Sisters of Silence in this battle. Yeah, the traitors Primarchs. I mean, there's a lot of them. There is a lot of them. Really, really, there's a lot of them. I'm just really just trying to understand, how is it possible still that the Emperor could not... I don't know if he can see the future, but why didn't he sense this, that his sons were drifting a bit, especially in terms of Logar, because Baldermort did say that Logar was the one who converted Horus into worshipping the Chaos Gods. So I'm just wondering, why didn't he further investigate on Logar and his transformation from a loyalist to a worshipping the chaos. So really, I'm still trying to understand in all of this conversion from being a loyalist to a chaos demon. I mean, how much time was that? Was it years? Was it months? Was it days? Was it extremely subtle that the emperor could not really notice that his sons were becoming these demon worshippers? Or, you know, it's just hard to believe. Yeah. I'll just have to see what happens in Act 3 for the ROGAL DORN Primarch of the 7th Legion Imperial Fists. But guys, I guess that's it. That's it with Baldermort today. If you like the video, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And I will see you next week. Warhammer 40k, yes. Warhammer Guide, Warhammer 40k, yes. Okay, bye-bye.